You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we are here to discuss the second test between England and the West Indies. The West Indies, they fought really hard until they stopped fighting, and then it was over in less than a session as England rattled through them. It was a pretty good match, tight enough to keep us interested, but England probably run out deserved winners. Ross, you're joining me today. Before we get into the facts of England v West Indies, there's some big news. Joe Biden has withdrawn from the presidential race. Who is your tip to replace him? And is this good for the fate of the world?
Has it actually happened?
Yeah, it happened like 5 minutes ago, mate.
Really? Wow. That is amazing. I was going to start this whole thing with I was sitting there watching the cricket this morning, and I was watching Major League Cricket highlights on my phone, and I was watching the Test match highlights from yesterday on the TV, and my father-in-law was just like, "Ross, you're a bit of a cricket enthusiast, aren't you?" And I was just like, I referred to myself as a cricket slag, just off the cuff, and that was what I was going to open with, not this new State of the Nation replacement for the USA. I think that they need a strong leader, don't they? That's what they need. They need a strong, fair, woke leader. And I think if Pat Cummins can get himself a US citizenship with his San Francisco Unicorns deal, then we could be seeing the next era of the cum dog, and the president of the United States of America would suit Pat Cummins.
That was actually that was the follow-up question. Mark Mercado asked us on Twitter which international cricketer would make the best US president and why, and you've gone with the cum dog.
An Australian.
Yeah. I don't think that's a bad shout.
It's close enough, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's Austrian, and he made Office in America. So it's very close. It's very close. There's a desk. You know, there's a desk at one of the Austrian airport that if people have gone to the wrong place. Do you know that?
I didn't.
Yeah, so literally, there's literally a help desk.
Is there only one airport in Austria?
Well, no, apparently, there's a thing here. Just one desk, one airport, whatever it is. And apparently, there's a team dedicated to people who have gone to Austria instead of Australia.
Oh, that's quite interesting. Before we get going into the pod, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click subscribe and like. We only put the live thing up about 10 minutes ago, so probably not many people watching as I speak, but hopefully as people decide they want some cricket analysis or some irreverent conversation about desks in Austrian airports, they will gravitate towards the pod. We've also been delisted from Twitter because we don't have a premium account, so people who would be watching us there live will have to make a tough internal podcast decision about whether we commit to that or not. And if you're on another platform, do click like and subscribe there as well. Ross, here's kind of what happened in the test match. It was like an arm wrestle, I think, this test match. So one side puts up big numbers, it looks like they're winning, then the other side, the West Indies, they come back, they get 400 and a bit themselves, and it looked like England might wobble. Then there's an early wicket, and England, it could go either way, but they fight back. Brook, Root, tons for both of them. West Indies, it's delicately poised. England are probably on top at this point. Then there's like a double compound fracture. West Indies arm, it blows out completely, and everyone's sort of sitting around going, "Why are you arm wrestling, lads?" That's a disaster. Where do you want to start?
I think we should start at the end, Jack. Actually, because on this podcast, I think it's fair to say we've questioned Bashir being in this team. Mm-hmm. We've questioned the validity of a pick of somebody who averages over 70 in county cricket, and is picked because he's got a high release point. So attributes over averages, I think, is what Tim Wigmore put on Twitter earlier today. And he picked up a fifer and bowled really well today. The West Indies could not deal with him whatsoever.
Yeah, he did. I think that's it's an interesting talking point to start things off. And I like it. You're throwing the podcast under the bus straight away, dragging a previous point of view out of the ground.
It's important, I think. We have to be balanced.
And making us discuss it.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. There's a lot of podcasts who would not do such a thing, but we are magnanimous, is how I'd describe us.
No, right. Let's start with that. Let's start with the whole of the second innings, and I guess predominantly Bashir's role in that. Then he takes 5 for 41 after 2 for 108 in the first innings. Bashir is what I was expecting, to be honest. Like I was like, the only way people are going to get out to this is if they try and do something ridiculous because they genuinely don't think he's up to the task. Came in the second innings, great flight, great guile. Took. I always think with spinners, Ross, and I'll throw it back over to you in a second. I always think with spinners, one of the things you want to look for is, are they getting wickets in ways that are somewhat repeatable? Like, are they deceiving batsmen in the same way? And I'm not saying like be boring. I'm not saying be Monty Panesar here, but do you have a skill as a spin bowler that means that batters aren't able to line you up and they can get out defending? And I think probably until the last 2 or 3 hours, I'd have said with Shoaib Bashir that might not be something that he has, and that given enough exposure to the top level, I think batters will work him out. But he looked like a pretty decent package. He was getting the ball to drift. He was getting that kind of late dip, and was giving the ball more of a spin than I remember him giving it, even in India on probably those more helpful decks. So let's start there. Shoaib Bashir, you think he's the great hope for England spin?
You put in words in my mouth slightly there, but I think it's good for the team that they've got a set of youngsters who are coming through, or say inexperienced people who are coming through, who are stepping up and showing what they're about. Jamie Smith hit some runs in the last Test match. Gus Atkinson has taken a few wickets over the last couple and outshone Jimmy Anderson on his last one. Bashir didn't even bowl in the Lord's Test. He got the thanks for coming, didn't he? That's what kind of club cricketers would call it. It was, he got run out for 0 and then didn't bowl and then just fielded for the entire time. So it was nice to see him in the game. First innings, it was a little bit kind of rabbit in the headlights, a little bit. The confidence wasn't quite there. And then what you've seen in this team time and time again, and whether it's Ben Stokes, whether it's just the team in general, they seem to rally around certain people and they up their game. And Bashir here, I think, did really well. And I think we've got to give credit to what is a decent performance. And we probably wouldn't be sitting here now. We probably would have gone into day 5 if he hadn't have mixed it up a little bit, I think is probably fair to say. He bowled with, as you say, kind of a little bit more aggression, a little bit more risk taking on that front, and wasn't there to. I just don't think he can hold up an end. He has to attack on that front at the moment. He doesn't have the experience to do that. I thought he did really well today.
Can I ask more generally then? If we agree that Shoaib Bashir did bowl quite well, did West Indies also bat quite badly?
I think there was definitely an element where they didn't. What's the word? They didn't stop the momentum England picked up after the first couple of wickets. There was almost like a procession just going through, and West Indies just kept coming out like they were part of a conveyor belt of just wickets that are coming to be taken. There didn't seem to be a major change in approach, and it kind of was reminiscent of what happened in the first Test match. It was a question of, when are these guys going to be all out? There wasn't a question of, are they going to put up even more of a fight? The game, I think you messaged when they got to 5 down, and you were just like, we'll be podcasting tonight, not tomorrow. And it was that part. There was nobody there who could really stand up and kind of take the game to England. And I think Jason Holder kind of flails his bat a little bit for number 6, but ultimately couldn't really build partnerships with anybody. And you look at the way in which kind of Mackenzie got out and Athanase, like, better cricketers don't get out like that, if you know what I mean. And Hodge, who got out, he played the whole first innings. Bashir kind of tried to get back underneath the eyes and did exactly that, and then got pinned straight away. And it was just, to me, a little bit lazy is how I saw it. I was just like, where's your game plan? The game plan was fine for the first innings. It felt like they hadn't changed their game plan from that part. They kind of thought the same shit will do. Unfortunately, on this occasion, it didn't.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. I think it was a pretty brutal subsidence. So 61 for no loss, and actually had England under a lot of pressure, scoring at 5 and over. Didn't look massively troubled. I mean, it wasn't all plain sailing. There were a few a few that whistle past the bat, and Wood bowled magnificently the whole test. How he ends up walking away with, did he even take a wicket in the first innings? I'm not sure that he did. He got one.
Yeah, the last one.
There's a brilliant twofer for Mark Wood. He was causing a little bit of trouble, and then Mikael Lewis out playing quite a long way outside off stump. Maybe a little bit of a weakness there, and obviously young, and looks like he does some things very well, but has been out the same way, I think, in all 4 of his innings so far. So we'll watch that space, I guess. He goes, and then it was kind of ridiculous. Like it was like watching people it wasn't so much a game plan. Like I think in circumstances like that, the runs have almost taken care of themselves for the whole day at the point that the first wicket goes down. 61 for 1. You can almost start thinking at that point. I think it was about an hour and a quarter-ish, maybe an hour and a half to the end of the day. Like, let's just make sure we get to the end of the day 2 down max. Like, we can really, really kind of shut up shop. And that didn't happen, or at least in that circumstance, just make sure there's 2 or 3 overs without a wicket, so that the excitement dies down a little bit. The crowd kind of literally start to go home at that point, and instead it's wicket in the 13th over, wicket in the 14th over, wicket in the 15th over, wicket in the 16th over, wicket in the 18th over, and it's all over.
And there isn't much experience in the team, right? I think that's what we've kind of come into. Everyone is aware that this is not a team with kind of hundreds of test matches underneath their belt. Brathwaite and Holder are kind of the most experienced batters in that lineup. We were a little bit surprised to not see Broston Chase kind of in this 11, kind of in the team. And you're kind of sitting there going, where is that? And that does come from playing in those kind of situations, right? You can start to take time out of the game. You could do a Mohammed Naib from Jonathan Trott in Afghanistan pretending he's got a hamstring injury. Like there are bits you can do to just try to disrupt the flow, but you lose, the top 5 very, very cheaply after what is a really good start. Brathwaite and Louis did well together, and it's really, really disappointing because the pitch, you cannot sit here and say the pitch is to blame. Like 17 wickets fell today, and normally you turn around and be like, oh right, there's a pitch problem rather than anything else, but it was an application problem this afternoon.
I would say I would defend West Indies slightly on the pitch front. Like I don't. It obviously wasn't a 17 wickets in a day pitch. England lose 7 of those wickets, and they're playing relatively aggressively. Like they're not thinking about preserving their wickets. Once Root and Brook have had a partnership, they're thinking, let's try and get 400 runs ahead. They don't quite manage that, but they were definitely going to lose.
Near enough, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, they were definitely going to lose all their 7 wickets. West Indies, by this point, there was a bit of up and down. Like it wasn't consistent, and I think the chances of them ever getting 380 were pretty slim, even after the good start, just because of that inconsistency. But I don't know. I mean, like in a sense, like I can kind of understand how it happens. Like once the miracle win is gone, and that probably happens after the 2nd wicket, and then the miracle draw is gone, and that goes when Brathwaite is out. So that's the 15th over. I think everyone who's played cricket has played in a scenario where you realise you've lost, and the reason for being there from a team perspective has evaporated. What I think I'd like to have seen a little bit more of is maybe a few more people in the West Indies team playing for themselves. And thinking about
where's Chanderpaul? Get him back.
Well, no, I'm not saying like in a really selfish way, but there was the chance for someone to get a 50 here and to make a statement about what they wanted for the future of their career and the type of player that they are in it, and it didn't quite happen. And like I know, we started by saying Shoaib Bashir bowled well, but I like Shoaib Bashir is the first spinner to take a 5 for Trent Bridge since Muralitharan. Like it's not. Shoaib Bashir isn't Muralitharan. Even if he showed things today that make me think, oh, maybe he could be a test quality off spinner. He's not Muralitharan, and I think to lose 5 wickets to him on day 4 on a pitch that wasn't it wasn't going through the surface. The up and down was for the seam bowlers. I think that's a bit weak by West Indies and a bit weak by the players. Scott Moore asked, was this collapse down to England's great discipline with the ball or West Indies' great lack of discipline with the bat? I'm saying it's kind of both of those things. I think England did what they had to do. It wasn't particularly sexy. And West Indies definitely didn't do what they had to do.
I also think like facing people like Gus Atkinson and Mark Wood was kind of like breathing fire at different points. And actually sometimes, when the game's up, is actually the heart there to truly fight against stuff like that. When you're just like, I don't know, I think who was the guy? Was it Sinclair? Got bumped up ahead of De Silva, and then took one on the wrist from Wood. That was a pretty nasty delivery, right? And if you're a West Indies player, if you're any player, right, in that space, when you're literally almost like a sitting duck against someone who's just coming in to be like, I'm going to take your bloody head off. It's quite difficult to motivate yourself in that space, I can imagine.
Ross, should we take a quick break, then we'll go back. We've got runs for Root. I was going to say Wood. Wood didn't get any runs. Root, Brook, Pope, and Kavem Hodge, who notched a century for West Indies to discuss. And we've got a few questions, so stick around for that. We will be back in 2 seconds.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast, where we're going over England v West Indies. If we wanted to score it American style, it would be 831 to England. And I can't do the maths off the top of my head for West Indies. 590. No, 600. An even 600 for West Indies. There we go. That would have been a good bit if I had done the maths beforehand. Ross, some star performance from the game that we could talk about from an England point of view. Ben Duckett, he gets 177 runs. 147 runs, bloody hell! 147 runs across the.
Let's put maths back in the Carol Vorderman corner, shall we? We just continue to read out what's in front of you.
Pope gets a ton and a 50. Joe Root gets 122. Harry Brook, he gets 109. Is it good signs for England's new batting generation and Joe Root from the old generation?
Well, I think this is Harry Brook's first century on English soil in Test match cricket. You look at what he's done in the 14 Test matches he's played so far. Like he pretty much he destroyed Pakistan. He's got plenty of 50s under his belt already. I think this is his 5th Test century, which is pretty damn good going. Ultimately, looks like he's got the shots and the strike rate that he bats at is pretty impressive as well. There has been questions around how he can play the short ball, and West Indies have tried that a little bit to him, and he's shown that he's been working on something, and he's developing as a cricketer. I think so. That's a real positive for England. Joe Root, if by Joe Root standards, bit of a lean patch with the bat over the last bit of his Test career, and classically does that bit where he moves to 8th on the all-time run list. So it's one of those pieces like our expectations on Joe Root are so goddamn high that it becomes a little bit Joe Root 122, a really massive century, and it just like that's just expected, which is just madness. So that's very, very good for England. Duckett and Crawley, when Max and I were ruminating before the Test series, who one of them was going to struggle, and we thought it would end up being Duckett because people would get more bounce, etc. Crawley had an unlucky dismissal earlier, and Duckett has kind of cashed in. Ollie Pope had, maybe not big questions on his place in the team, but enough to kind of say, look, you need to make sure you hit some runs here, and he's doing so in that space. So I think for England things are looking very rosy. Only the first time they've ever hit 400 in both innings, which just seems bonkers. It is. Yeah, that is
it's quite rare. It's quite rare in Test cricket. There are a few more stats around this. It's the second time it's ever happened in England. Don Bradman's team did it in, I think, like 1938. It was a long time ago, or maybe 1948. But I think it had an 8 in it. Could have had a 9 in it. a long time ago. Let's just stick with a long time ago. We've already demonstrated maths isn't happening today. It's it's the sixth time ever in Test cricket where the first three innings of the game have had 400 in. So it's a pretty rare feat that this kind of thing occurs. And I do think there's reasons to be optimistic if you're an England fan from a batting point of view. I totally get that the pitch being pretty flat and the boundaries being pretty small at Trent Bridge make a difference. But England have been relatively consistent with the bat, apart from in India. And even in India, they did win a game because somebody got a miracle double century for the last couple of years. And I think I think you can expect now that it's not just a fad. Like we're sort of 2 or 3 years into this playing differently experiment, and we've got some new players in, replacing players like Bairstow and folks who suffered recently in Smith and Brook. And I think if you are watching England play, the expectation should be that they will get 400 batting first, and that they should do it pretty quickly. It looks like a quality batting lineup, and you can say what you want about West Indies' application with the bat this evening. I don't think you can really question their talent with the ball. I think they are genuinely a pretty handy bowling side. The two Josephs, they're really good. Jaden Seals, he bowled an excellent spell this afternoon to wrap up the England tail. Fair, they might be a spinner light, but they've got Jason Holder bowling as their seam bowling all rounder, and he's a challenge. So I think to go back to back, score 400 twice, to kind of back that up one test in the past by racking up the runs at Lords as well, is all really, really encouraging stuff for England. Will it mean that they win the Ashes? Will it mean that they win in India? Probably not. Those are still quite pie in the sky ambitions, I think. Same with Shoaib Bashir taking some wickets. Like, does that mean he's going to go to Perth in 18 months' time and get Khawaja and Head out because they're left-handed? Probably not. But like, there's some indications from this England team, I think, that they're better than England from 5 years ago, and that they might even be better than England from 12 months ago when that Ashes series was taking place. Do you agree or disagree with that broad brush statement?
I think that there's green shoots in there, but you need that more consistent part. I think whilst West Indies do have a battery of fast bowlers who are going to challenge. I think it was Ian Bishop on commentary speaking with Stuart Broad. It kind of felt that they didn't have a collective bowling plan throughout. There was a little bit where they've got some really good weapons to use, but actually they were either flittering between too many game plans simultaneously, or were a little bit kind of lost in the weeds. And it's a bit disappointing on that front. You've seen some good bursts. But I think England get credit for that with the bat, though. Like,
I think it's difficult to control Joe Root when he's scoring fluently. It's difficult to control Harry Brook. Period. They're not the first team that have run into those two players and found it difficult. And today, and I think they batted together for a little bit yesterday as well on day 3. They were in excellent touch. And then in the first innings, West Indies dropped the game, basically. They could have been in a really, really strong position. I think they probably still lose based on how the rest of the game played out. But they could realistically have bowled England out for 50 to 100 runs fewer than they did. But they dropped 5 catches. And they were... A lot of those catches were catches that were generated by good bowling. They were like edges to slip or edges to gully. And... if you're a fast bowler, you're probably expecting Jason Holder to catch it. I mean, Jason Holder must be one of the best catchers at second slip in world cricket. Like, he gets to everything. I mean, it's a giant man, so he's getting to.
He's like one of those car sales inflatables. That's what he's like.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. And I think you can feel a bit aggrieved with West Indies. From that perspective, but I also like to go back to my original point. I do think that not having a plan to Joe Root and Harry Brook is something that, from Root's point of view, teams have been experiencing for about 10 years. And for Harry Brook's point of view, we can probably expect teams to be experiencing for another 10 years.
Yeah.
And he averages 33 against bouncers. So maybe that will be his downfall. But maybe it won't. Maybe like there's a bit of randomness in there, or maybe he'll make an improvement to his game. And even then, averaging 33 against bouncers, you can bowl 2 of them and over. You have to bowl somewhere else to him.
I think it's also the point. I think your point as well is around that Root and Brook score all round the ground, and whilst and that's also very, very difficult. We saw the return of the scoop as well from the reverse scoop from Joe Root today after we got to Bumrah last time. He put it back in his bag and then got himself to a century or whatever today, so it was good. I think that we should talk about the West Indies first innings, Jack, because Hodge and De Silva and Afanase applied themselves brilliantly, I thought, and that was good, regardless of if the pitch was flat or anything like that. They really did build innings, and I thought it was actually really encouraging to see that. A lot of people were sitting there on Twitter going, "Oh well, Jimmy Anderson's been forced out. It's a disgrace. England are never going to take wickets again." Opposition are allowed to bat, and they're allowed to bat well every now and again, right? There's going to be those situations, and you saw some really good application. And I think that De Silva's innings at the end kind of probably overshadowed Hodge a little bit, but without Hodge's kind of doggedness up front, and then some of his fluency around it, I think he hit 1924s or something like that. He was really quite the player in that space, and for him to then come in and get a duck in the last innings was bitterly disappointing for him.
I think probably in the same way as with Shoaib Bashir, that conversation we had earlier, you could see some of the thinking for picking Afanase and Hodge in the innings that they played in the first innings. Now, if you just look at their numbers, you would say you're going to lose a lot of Test matches with them batting 4 and 5 because you're just not going to get the runs. Doesn't matter how well you bowl. Like, you're going to be bowled out for 100 a lot if that's your 4 and 5. But in conditions where you could bat, they piled on. They scored the runs pretty quickly. They put England under a lot of pressure. They got a deserved lead. I felt sorry for Afanase that he was out for 82. I think it was a good catch, but I thought the pair of them deserved to get centuries together. And had they done that, that was probably the actual turning point in the game. It was that England managed to break that partnership and chip away at the wickets. And I know that De Silva, who again played excellently, and Shamar Joseph, who's got to be one of the most entertaining guys to watch bat in, like, what a ridiculously good number 11 that guy is. Like,
the swivel hit, which broke the tiles on the roof, was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
What's going on there? I know he's only played 4 tests. He's averaging 17. Like, he should be batting 8.
Well, look at some of the Joseph shots or Seal shots. You're just a little bit. I think that, so we should talk about that. Anyway, we should talk about that. We should talk about the 11th wicket or 10th wicket partnership for West Indies, because we've been there before with England, haven't we? Where we've seen them flail in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that sometimes when players are swinging the bat and they're capable of hitting the ball for 6, sometimes you just end on the end of a punishing spell. I know that all the captaincy whisperers were saying Stokes have got it wrong. This, that, and the other. Don't bowl the short ball.
Joe Root's leg side gimmies were nice when he just went for 18 off the over.
I don't think England got it right in this particular scenario, but I think, again, when crazy stuff is happening, it's sometimes difficult to remember that it is the number 8 and the number 11.
I was getting flashbacks to Shami and Bumrah at Lords, smash us all over the place. I was like, no, lads, just bowl at the stumps.
Yeah, I don't think it was a particularly edifying situation for England, but what was it, a 71 run final wicket partnership? I mean, that's clearly terrible. That's really clearly terrible. But
It was really entertaining. Really entertaining.
I don't. Yeah, it was entertaining, and I don't think De Silva and Shamar Joseph are the worst players in the world, and I think that sort of thing does happen on flat pitches when you bowled 100 overs. Like you can get tired. It was the hottest day of the year. Weird stuff happens in cricket.
I just found it funny that
I'm
De
not too
Silva was
worried
turning
about it.
down singles, and then Shamar Joseph took that personally, and then smashed Atkinson for like 3 boundaries in a row, and like each shot even more impressive than the last. It was amazing.
Yeah, Ross. Ollie Pope got a ton as well. We didn't really talk about him, so well done, Ollie. Well, actually, we kind of did. Well done to Ollie Pope. We've already got a few questions. Shall we crack on with those?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Lackey. It could be Lockie. Lachy. How are you saying that?
Latchy.
What positives can West Indies take out of this game after crumbling in the second innings? So talk to me.
I think getting past 400 and getting past England's score was like amazing. Like, that was a really strong piece of application. I thought they did really, really well. They've taken 20 wickets in the match as well. As much as England are trying to go for more runs and hit them quickly, etc. Like, you still have to take the wickets and still have to do the business, right? They will look back on this as probably a slight missed opportunity. They got Zach Crawley out very early on in the second innings, and then just could not seem to figure it out against Duckett and Pope. And by the time they were, those two guys were out, it was kind of too late. England were well on course to getting kind of a lead of at least 300 and doing it really quickly. They end up with a lead of 385. So I think they'll look at the first innings, very, very well. And then there's plenty of stuff for what is an inexperienced team to learn from in the second innings.
Tom Moody asks, is this Shoaib Bashir's most impressive performance, and is he the future of England's spin?
I think it is a good day's work in this space. I don't think we've got the second coming of Graham Swan here at this point in time. I think he bowled well. You can only beat what's in front of you as well. But I thought he had a day or two better when he was playing in India on the tour before.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was. I think that he did well in India, but without being that good either. I would say it was probably a 6 out of 10 performance. Is what he did in India. Like, there were moments that were good. By and large, though, I didn't see anything where I was like, this is a man that's going to thrive in global cricket. Particularly not in England. And today he's taken 5 wickets. I think I said the first spinner to do it since Muralitharan at Trent Bridge, which I know they don't play there every year, but it's probably 15 tests. It's a while. Yeah. It's a fair old while. And West Indies, I don't think they'll look back and be happy about how they played, but it was still good. And I think the way he took the wickets exhibited skills that I didn't previously think he had. Is he the future of English cricket? I think it's really too hard to say. Or English spin, I think it's really hard to it's really too early to say. Tom Moody also mentions Rayan Ahmed. He's in the mix. Probably see Hartley get another go. If Shoaib Bashir doesn't take a wicket for the rest of the year, do they go back to Jack Leach? That could happen. I don't think...
If England have had issues in the past of picking spinners who then can't bat, Shoaib Bashir's record with the bat is pretty unflattering. So there is a question there of what they end up doing in that space, because England, they know the currency of the game. So it is a challenge.
Yeah. Robert Blackburn says, Gus Atkinson was less effective with the new ball. Who do you view as an option to open the bowling and allow him to play in his preferred role?
I don't. It's quite difficult, I think, really on this. I think England probably knew it was going to be the type of pitch they were going to play on, and he ultimately comes out of the Test match with a nice bucket of wickets again, and did his job relatively well. Chris Wokes with his grey tufts. Have you seen his little grey quiff that he's got going on?
I have, Wokes. Yeah.
And I think there is a question of going, who are England now going to play in the next couple of Test matches? So the series is wrapped up. They've got one more against West Indies at Edgbaston next week. Are we going to see a bit of a change up. I probably will. I can't imagine they're going to give Gus Atkinson a third Test match in 3 weeks on the trot. So we're going to get the opportunity to see a replacement. So whether that is Potts with the new ball or Pennington with a new ball, don't quite know. But surely that person gets a couple of Test matches now, one against West Indies and one in the first matches against Sri Lanka.
I would have thought it would be Potts. I thought I was quite impressed with Potts when he played a couple of summers ago. I think there's, a decent value in him as a bowling weapon. I think the thing England are probably wondering is if they go to Australia and they pick Atkinson and Wood and Bashir, one of Atkinson and Wood has to open the bowling with whoever the other bowler is, whether that's Wokes or Potts or Ollie Robinson or Pennington or Sam Cooke. Name whoever you want as the other bowler. But if you play Atkinson and Wood, someone is opening the bowling, and you've got to know whether they can do it or not.
The question then comes into a piece of, so Ben Stokes didn't bowl really in this Test match. He bowled 2 overs in the Test match. So there's a question there around. You've got someone who is a really good bowler with the swinging ball. Is there an opportunity up front to go for Ben Stokes to be doing the captaincy piece there? But it's a massive ask, right? So, but there's that part. So
that's not happening. That is not happening. That is an ice cold take. I'm saying that right now. Scott Moore says, was this collapse down to England? Oh, we've done that one, Scott. Barde Hoke, cricketer, says there are a handful of Test nations left who are good enough to compete and give a fight. Knowing that, does this make matches like today seem irrelevant? Ross, was this an irrelevance?
No, I don't think it is. I think the last Test match was absolutely shocking, like really, really bad. But this one, I think there was, you saw the grit, fight, determination, and some real talent from the West Indies, and you're only going to get better by having the opportunity to play this. I think if you take international cricket and make it even more of a closed shop than it already is, then that's to the detriment of the game, and you need to be having stuff like this. People will sit there and go, well, I had day 5 tickets, all this kind of stuff. Well, unfortunately, that's your own fault if you've bought day 5 tickets. When you know that England are playing against the West Indies. I think we said in the previews that this Test series would be lucky if it goes to 10 days, that game played in total, and we're kind of on for that, right? I think it was 2.5 in the first one. It's now kind of 4 days. So we'll see what comes out of the next kind of Test match. But I think it was always going to be difficult for West Indies, but they need to have more and more opportunities to play. And international cricket in general needs to have a slightly different model to make it more sustainable for the likes of West Indies.
I think that's the critical thing, to be honest. Like it's clearly a viable sport because people are paying to go and watch it and paying quite a lot to have it on their TV subscription. But the global reality means that a lot of that money is based in certain countries. England is one of them because it's a wealthy nation. India is another one because there are lots of people who really like cricket in India, and you have to factor that into some of your financial decision making if you want the matches to be interesting, and if you want the smaller nations who are well capable, by the way, of producing good players. There's a whole load of good West Indian players playing franchise cricket, and there's some really good West Indian players playing in this Test team. They're probably 4 or 5 players light from being a really competitive Test team, and over a full Test match that will get exposed, as happened in this game. Like, you can hang for a while with a team where all of the players are contributing, but if you're weaker, you are eventually going to be found out. That's the nature of the beast. How do you get to a situation where teams like West Indies can find those extra 4 players? Well, you give them the money to develop them, or you give them the money to keep the players that are good enough interested in that aspect of the sport, or you bin it entirely and go down the other route.
Yeah, I also find it really quite disingenuous when people refer to some of the guys as like mercenaries on it. I think there's so much hypocrisy kind of around the game, and if someone is literally building a life for themselves and go, right, I'm going to be a professional sports person and be able to be doing the thing that I love, but whilst being able to support my family, support the life that I want, etc., people kind of saying, well, why don't they just accept kind of lower pay and worse playing conditions and worse working conditions? and make sure that you do things for kind of your country. And I actually find it a little bit disingenuous that the person saying that, if they were in the same position, would more than likely kind of choose a little bit of self-interest rather than that, because ultimately at the moment they are being failed by the governance of the game rather than it being something that is being driven by personal greed.
Right, Ross, I think on that cheery note, we'll wrap up the pod. We'll try and get one in before the next test. I think we said that last time, but then Max disappeared on holiday again.
He's literally that guy living the life of Riley, isn't he?
It's ridiculous.
He gets married, goes on a mini moon, and he's going on a honeymoon in Vietnam in November. The guy's living the life of Riley.
Yeah, unbelievable. Anyway, he is back from Tuesday, so we'll force Max to do a podcast.
By himself. Single man it.
Monologue. Thanks very, very much for watching and listening. Do make sure you click like and subscribe.
Tell your
Follow us
friends.
on Twitter at the Cricket Pod. Yeah, and tell your friends. Get them interested. There's some good cricket happening, and we're talking about it. Goodbye.